Hey Larry, it's Jim from TrekWorld, and today we're going to take a look at the Paramount Pictures Corporation production handbook for Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Remember that in all of these videos, there's going to be a link in the description that you can go to where you will actually be taken to an affiliate link on Amazon showing you the availability of the books that I've been discussing. Now, we've seen one of these production handbooks before, and this one is actually a little bit different in its interior context than the one that we saw for Star Trek The Motion Picture, which is far more publicity-minded, in my opinion. This actually has some real honest-to-God production information in it that we're going to go over here in a moment. And as a result, is much better targeted to what you and I are looking for on channels like TrekWorld. Now, the whole front section of the book is pretty much identifying all the key players. It's going to give us a basic synopsis of what's going on. Basically, that ecologically, we pooped the bed, as they said, and that now in the 23rd century, we're paying the price. So our galactic heroes must travel back in time and rectify a rather grievous mistake. The first part of the book steps in through all the production people. Harve Bennett, his background from the $6 Million Man in earlier Star Trek movies. Leonard Nimoy bringing out the fact that this is his second time directing a Star Trek movie, his directorial debut in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And it talks about how he and Bennett worked side by side right up through the final editing moments of getting this movie ready. It will take us through line producers, cinematographers, basically everybody that was involved in the making of the movie from the production end standpoint. Not a whole lot of detail on them, just their names and high-level accomplishments, and then moving on. And up to that point, it reads sort of like a press release. But the next section is truly interesting to me. This is the first section we're going to take a look at. It begins at page 11, and be prepared. There are 50 pages in this. But listen to this particular paragraph sentence that begins with, production of Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home began on Monday, February 24th. 1986, on Stage 9 at Paramount Studios in Hollywood. And it says the first thing they filmed was the scene of the Federation starship that encounters the probe first and realizes its immense power at shutting down systems. In doing so, we see the USS Saratoga for the first time. That also mentions that the existing Enterprise bridge set was redressed to be the bridge set for the USS Saratoga. And then it makes another interesting statement that I thought was fascinating, and that was other parts of the Enterprise set were reshot during that day to represent scenes taking place on the USS Shepherd and the USS Yorktown, as they also encountered the probe. If you have any videos, photos, or documents that you would like to donate to us, please feel free to send them to jim@trek-world.com or submit them via the web at submit.trek-world.com. And then, just like a production diary, it tells you the very next day the crew moved down to San Diego where they filmed on the USS Ranger, which was, of course, the aircraft carrier that stood in as the Enterprise aircraft carrier in the movie. It even goes out of its way to point out that the USS Ranger was no stranger to this kind of use, because 6 months prior, the scenes for the movie Top Gun had been filmed on the USS Ranger. Then it points out that the following week, the scenes were shot of the bird of prey landing in the park and staying cloaked. And it points out that this was the first time in Star Trek's motion pictures history that the public was actually present at the time of filming. And then after that, they moved on to an industrial plant in Santa Ana, which of course was used to film the scenes with McCoy and Scotty about the transparent aluminum. It then also goes on to explain that they used stages 12 and 14 for the Federation Council, as well as the bridge of the bird of prey. They used the opportunity they had between the end of Star Trek III and now to actually go in and completely redress the Klingon set. Basically, they went through and they made the set appear busier with more things on screens and such, and more of a grimy appearance. The in-universe explanation for this is this was the work that Scotty and team were doing during their 3-month exile on Vulcan. It also goes in to point out that normally when a starship in Star Trek is shown as being under great turbulence, you would tilt the camera and then have the actors sway from side to side I'm sure we've all seen the clips a million times to Sunday. We know what they're talking about. But for the first time in Star Trek history, Nimoy had a 110-foot crane lift the set in the air. So to show the effects of being moved around, they were actually able to rock and swing and manipulate the set for the very first time. So it wasn't reliant solely upon the actors, but there could be actual kinetic motion represented in the film. Another thing that goes into that I thought was really, really interesting is that on the day that they shot the scenes involving Jane Wyatt as Amanda, they were using the set that she had filmed Lost Horizon with Frank Capra back in the day. Well, it just so happened that Frank Capra III, his grandson, was present that day. And as a nice tribute and homage to Jane, he had Frank Capra III actually yell action and cut for the scene involving Amanda giving advice to Spock. Now it goes on to a couple other things specifically about production. This is truly an honest-to-goodness handbook. It really does tell you things that happen in production. I was not aware of anything like this until recently when we found the first one of these. And like I said, for Star Trek The Motion Picture, it was much more of a let's put something out there for publicity than it was for providing an honest-to-God look at the background. Now, these things were reproduced by Lincoln Enterprises. So in most cases, when you look for production handbooks, you're going to find basically the Lincoln Enterprises copies, which are literally just like their script copies, were knockoff Xeroxes, or mimeographs actually, of Paramount or Desilu documentation. So if you're just wanting to know about these kind of things, the Lincoln Enterprises versions are probably half the cost of these. But if you're collecting, the Lincoln Enterprises versions don't cut it for a collector. You've got to have the official Paramount product. The very last section go into a more of an in-depth bio of the various actors. You know, how we knew them, what they've done since the last time we've seen them, and a little bit of private things about what hobbies they like and things like that. This is the boilerplate that we normally would expect just for pure public relations. So all in all, this is a really good outing in the Production Handbook Information series. Do you have a message that you would like to share with us and the Star Trek universe? If so, please call our user comments line and give us your thoughts. So now let's get up with the fun stuff, like this right over here.